welcome, folks. My name is Burr. That's my winter name. Ask me what my summer name is, I'll say they ain't summer enough to bother with. I'll tell you about maple sugar, and I'm also a 7th generation Vermont sugar maker. It goes on right here in this sugar house, but only in the spring. We're lucky if we get 4 or 5 weeks of sugaring. Sometime mid-March through mid-April it comes to us. Sugaring always follows a long, hard winter. Oh, we're so glad to say goodbye to winter and welcome sugaring, which is in the spring. This is spring. Yes, we still have snow for sugar, and we want to have snow. Things need to be cool for sugaring to work right. Be freezing every night, but thawing a little slightly every day. The snow melts gradually. Here are the maple trees we tap. They're wild sugar or hard rock maples. Nobody that I know has ever planted maples for sugaring use. Takes 40 to 50 years of growing before a maple's big enough to use the first time. We go to these trees every year and drill tap holes in the sapwood. 1.5 inches deep is how deep we drill. A new hole has to be drilled in a different place every year. We tap 5,000 trees, so it's a bit of a project on this farm. New hole in a different place every year. I don't think we're hurting those trees. I'm sure there's maples right on this farm that have been tapped 100 years in a row. We do want to be careful not to over-tap the trees. This maple is over-tapped, and that's one of the neighbor's trees. Yeah, it weren't my fault. He was in Florida when we tapped his tree. The weather has to be about right for sap to run. We need freezing every night, but not too cold. We need thawing every day, but not too warm. And we need a west wind. Besides that, we're not fussy at all. My father, Harry Morse Sr., was a true Yankee expert in what we call sugar weather.
And the snow gets sticky that time of year. When it sticks to the bare branches of the maple trees, it seems to stimulate the trees.
We call it sugar snow in the spring. That'll bring us the right atmosphere for a run of sap. I say sap runs, I don't really mean it. It's just a dripping. Drip, drip, drip. That's a good run. I've seen a 3-gallon bucket fill up before in 8 hours. At that rate, why don't you know things get pretty darned exciting here in Vermont. Sap is just 2% sugar content. It's going to take 40 gallons of sap to boil down and make 1 gallon of pure maple syrup. Harry referred to early season sap as spring tonic.
Looks much like water, just about the same consistency as water. And it's good to wet the whistle with early in the spring.
Sap's got a little bit of flavor. I'll drink quite a lot just to quench my thirst. It's good for you. It puts years on your life after all. Would you guess I'm really 130 years old? It don't do a darn thing for the hairline. We have to put on the snowshoes. We prefer to walk on top of the snow rather than wallow through it. Snow is right up to my middle. It's that deep, and it'll be with us through the first half of the season. Here's how sugaring was done when I was younger. Buckets hang on the trees. Normally horses will draw a sled with a gathering tank through the woods. There's mud and snow and steep hillsides, so the horses work pretty good.
A lot of the old Yankees just love horses. They talk the same language. Whether it's English or French or a mixture, a few cuss words thrown in now and then, the horses understand.
We have all had to modernize, so we're all using plastic tubes now. There's miles and miles of it out there for our 5,000 trees. The tubes are strung permanently in the woods, but only used for the month of sugaring. It's a matter of the tubing carrying the sap downhill out to roadside tanks where it's easier to get at. We do have a few problems with maintenance. You see the squirrels chew into the tubes. The limbs will come out of trees with every windstorm and take the tubing down. So there's no shortage of labor, but it's easier work. Here's a vacuum releaser. The scientists have researched it and they found sap will only come out of the tree if the pressure inside the tree is greater than the atmospheric pressure. So they're recommending we use vacuum, which is negative pressure outside the tree in the tubing line. That kind of tricks those trees into flowing sap. We're going to get more sap using vacuums, sometimes twice the sap that we used to with buckets, and I'm not worried we're hurting those trees. The tree has plenty of sap going up, hundreds of gallons I would say, and we're taking just a small part of it. The evaporator is here in back of me. You're seeing a picture of it, and it's a very costly process to boil sap. For that reason, all sugar makers have invested in reverse osmosis machines. The reverse osmosis is going to remove a big part of the water from the natural sugar in a less expensive way. We'll bring our sap up to 10% sugar content through reverse osmosis. Then it comes into the evaporator up here in this white pipe. First it goes to the steam away, the part way up high where the steam rises from the boiling below. Sap gets preheated and gains another 1.5% of sweetness up there. Then below the steam away is the flue pan. It's a heat exchanger. It's just a raging boil. Sap sweetens another 5%. You see the steam is just billowing up into the sky, leaving the sugar from the maple tree behind. What a great fragrance it is too when we boil. Finally, from the flue pan, 15+% sweetened sap will go into the front pan where it has to travel down and back through a 5-compartment maze. Sweetens up, you see, as it goes along, just like my wife Betsy has over the last 40 years. Betsy writes the script for me. The syrup's got to be just the right thickness. One way we check it, see if it's ready, is to let it sheet or apron off a dipper. We also must use a hydrometer. Syrup needs to weigh exactly 11 pounds per gallon. That's got to be precise, because if it's not boiled enough, it will ferment. If it's boiled too much, it will crystallize. Syrup is an amber color. It is 66.9% sugar content. When it's finished, we pump it through a filter press to get a mineral from the tree called sugar sand removed. Then it's crystal clear and ready to use as maple syrup. We may have to boil all night long to keep up with a big run. Here's the neighbor's sugar house steaming up into a moonlit sky. He's been accused of making something besides maple syrup. There are 4 grades of syrup. You will be able to taste them down in our tasting area. The light colored grades we make early in the season when the days are cool. They have a delicate flavor. The dark syrups we make late in our season when the weather's warming. They have strong maple flavors. It's all decided by the temperature. It has nothing to do with the boiling process. Trust only the words pure maple. This stuff you see says maple on the label, but maple flavoring is artificial. Trust only the words pure maple, preferably pure Vermont maple, or better yet, pure Morse Farm Vermont maple. My father shows you what things look like at the end of sugaring. Sugaring will begin with the deep snow. It'll end with the deep mud. God, it wouldn't have been so bad, but you see, Pa was standing on my shoulder. Sugar makers are farmers. You don't make a living on a short sugar season. And here you see the color. It's what you folks all came to see. You know, the reason I show you this picture, though, has nothing to do with colored leaves. I'd like to point out how rugged Vermonters are. Those 2 in the canoe were Vermonters. God, they'd gone out that day and picked out the rock. They was towing it back home. There's just one more thing I'd like to tell you folks. I like to write. I write up something I find interesting that happens on the farm. Twice a month I send it out. It's called News from Vermont. It goes by email. You can sign up for it by going to morsefarm.com. I've written 3 books. This last one's called Sugarworks. I have a lot of experiences to tell about. Some are humorous, some are downright pathetic. But we have the book, and Morse Farm has just come out with our own maple cookbook. And speaking of cooking, if you want to cook with maple syrup, use the darker grades. If you want to eat it on pancakes, or in my favorite way is on vanilla ice cream, use the lighter grades. Maple syrup has antioxidants and trace minerals. It comes right out of a tree. It has to be good for you, and it is. Thank you so much, folks, for coming to see us.